You want
And
to?
there we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome today to our AI webinar called From Curiosity to Conviction. I'm Therese Brown, and I'm the Executive Director at the Association of Catholic Publishers. We are so very glad to have you with us today. As some of you may remember when you registered, this is a follow-up to our ACP membership meeting a couple of weeks ago, where we spent all of Friday talking about AI from various perspectives. One of our speakers was our speaker today, Jason Malec, and he is going to represent some of his information. I'm sure expand a little bit more since we're giving him 30 minutes as opposed to the original 10. But we hope to give you a good sense of what he shared with us. I think you'll find it valuable. He stayed with some of our heads of houses after to have some more conversation. So he's definitely got that executive perspective as well. So, a couple of housekeeping things. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to share them in the Q&A or chat feature. I will monitor those and make sure that they get to Jason, and Jason has a chance to share his responses to them. And secondly, I am also going to monitor time. So when it's about 5 minutes to the end, you all will see me as well as Jason. I'll raise my hand and go like this. So we know we're coming to the end because we respect the time that you set aside for this. And last but not least, there is a recording, as y'all have noticed probably. We will post that at the ACP website under webinars. It will also be at the ACP YouTube channel under webinars as well. So if you want to share this with other folks, we really encourage you to do so. There will be a link in the next newsletter as well. So you've got multiple opportunities to get it back in your brain and share it out with those who you work with and those who you think need to hear what Jason has to say. So without further ado, I'm going to let Jason introduce himself. And here we go.
Awesome. Thank you, Therese. What a privilege to be able to join y'all. Um, Therese, can you see this? Just give me a thumbs up if you can see the full screen.
Yes, I can.
Awesome. So, from curiosity to capability, this is an AI overview for mission-oriented organizations. And as Therese said, my name is Jason Malec. I have a consultancy called Ideate, as well as the Next Mountain. I'll share just a little bit about that at the end. But my wife and I live here in Atlanta, Georgia. I have a background in technology, in pastoral work, and in parachurch work. And so I've really blended all three of those technology, pastoral work, and parachurch work, and helping to serve organizations that are faith driven and especially in this kind of disruptive moment. Teresa, I don't know if it's possible to actually see people's comments if I can see people's comments in the chat, but I would love to kind of get a sense, if so, what people's perspectives or exposure to AI is. By a show of hands, if you can, maybe chat in the
Yeah, let's use
webinar.
chat. I like that. Let's use chat. That's a great thing to do.
Yeah, webinar chat. Number one is I have never touched it. Number two is I played with ChatGPT or maybe Claude, a time or two. Number three is I use AI weekly or maybe even more frequently for real work. Number four is I've stood up agents or workflows. And number five, we've shipped AI into our enterprise. So type your number here so that I can get a sense for who you are. I haven't seen anybody, so I don't know, Therese, if maybe I'm not able to see the responses. Are you?
Oh, chat is disabled. Oh, that's bad.
Bad, bad,
That is
bad.
bad. If you since Q&A is enabled, use the Q&A to do that. Use the Q&A to
Oh,
send us
there
your
you go.
numbers. Yeah,
Okay,
I'll
good. I'll
I'll
look
take a
for
look at that.
Q&A.
Thank you, Jim,
This
for
is
noting that.
Q&A. Yeah, here we go.
There we
Chat is
go.
disabled. Two, three,
So,
two,
yeah.
two, three, three. All right, two. Perfect. Oh, this is going to be so much fun. I love it. Okay, that gives me a good sense. Is there anybody who's four or five who's actually deployed agentic workflows or throughout their enterprise? It looks like no. We're one, twos, and threes. Excellent. All right, that gives me a really good sense for where we are. Thank you for playing along. Let me maybe set the stage for where we are and hopefully demonstrate a little bit of empathy. Um, I think it goes without saying that we are in the midst of a massive disruption, and I would say industry disruption, maybe even broader than our industry. It could be across industries, but at least in our industry, in your industry, in the publishing sector, there's three major disruptions that I see, and you can probably add to this list. The three are this: number one, intellectual property theft. That is, your content has actually been stolen in large part by artificial intelligence and used for model training. Number two, SEO collapse. If you're in the marketing department or sales, you know that SEO has been the way that you and I were able to get our stuff exposed to the marketplace. It was your distribution. But as AI has supplanted kind of traditional search and social media ways of getting access to our customer, SEO is collapsing, and people are beginning to turn to and discover what many are calling GEO, or generative engine optimization. And anybody who says that they're an expert in it is probably not accurate, because we're all figuring out what is GEO. How do you actually get your content into a generative engine or a large language model? The third disruption is a minimization of your primary source value, and that is your worth. What I mean by that is, if you think about how large language models are actually working, those of you that have experimented with ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, or any of the others, you know that it actually summarizes content. I'd call that secondary at best content. And what that means is your primary sources are actually not showing up in search. And therefore, you and I are actually reading almost exclusively secondary resources, maybe even tertiary, but at least secondary resources. In those primary sources, that which is really your worth. It is the value that you create in the world is being suppressed. It's minimized because large language models aren't surfacing those primary sources. And as a result, if you're an executive, this results in a massive executive disorientation. Now, before we all go, woe is me, I want to again empathize with how you're feeling. Here's a couple of emotions that I would anticipate. Number one, fear. If you're like me, you've had this reaction. Oh my gosh, this is another kind of Genesis Babel moment. It's end times. It's human hubris, right? Wanting to supplant human capacity, or maybe even to become like God in a Babel like way. Well, I want to give you permission to name that. This is a real and reasonable response to what we're experiencing, fear. You might also be experiencing this, that is judgment. Well, it's not as good as anything that we can create. It's biased, it's flawed. I've heard about it hallucinating, all the things. Yeah, that's all true. But so is every other tool that we've ever stewarded. It starts off in its worst capacity, but I want to say it's getting better. And so this critique, or maybe even emotional response, we have to be careful about it. Yes, we can critique it. Many of you have probably read or at least heard of Andy Crouch's book, Creating Culture. He talks about four different ways that oftentimes we, in particular, followers of Jesus, react or respond to culture change. That is, we can critique it, we can condemn it, we can copy it, we can critique, copy, condemn, or consume it. But he says we need to actually take the fifth path, and that is to create culture as people who are shaped, formed in the image of the creator God. Our response shouldn't be to critique, but to actually create. So yes, AI isn't as good as a human, but our objective should be to create, not necessarily critique. You may be like me, kind of experiencing fatigue. And that is to say, goodness gracious, how many of these new tools must we keep up with? I mean, is there one more thing or 100 more things that we need to learn? You're already running thin, and doing more isn't the answer. Well, goodness gracious, then what is? You may be suspicious. I mean, who actually benefits? Aren't there, environmental impacts? Isn't there disparity in who this serves? Is it just for the rich and wealthy to keep getting rich and wealthier and maybe even having more tools at their disposal while the rest of us or the rest of them don't? That is definitely worth asking. How about confusion? I mean, which tool, which policy, governance is a huge implication of this. How do we know what to do, who to look at as authorities, who can help us along with this? The fog is real. And then lastly, awe. Those of you who have tinkered with or experimented with various AI tools, you probably have had this experience or emotion where you think, oh my gosh, I have never seen anything like this. And you might have even experienced the exhilaration of, wow, what this thing can do is profound. That's true. Of course, it's not the same thing as worship. All seven of these emotions are reasonable, but none of them is a strategy. And so I hope we can spend the balance of our time being strategic, really thinking about what this is and who it's for and how best to utilize it. Before we get to strategy, though, I want to talk about theology. And that is to say, before we consume or utilize any tools, I think we always need to ask the question, what is the theology or what are the theological implications of this tool? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we don't have a ton of time, but I do want to at least hit on three things. That is number one, I alluded to it earlier. You and I are shaped in the image of the Creator. We bear the imago Dei. And we see that, of course, in the book of Genesis and throughout the scriptures. And because the Lord God is the Creator God, the Creator of the universe, and we are shaped in His image, we too are creators. And therefore, we shouldn't be fearful even of creations that might be disruptive, like AI. Number two, we need to be good stewards of the tools that we have. Many of you, well, probably all of us, are familiar with the parable of the talents in the Gospel of Matthew, where many people are tasked with being a good steward of the tools. And the parable is very clear that the one who buries the tool is actually not being faithful, but rather being fearful. And I think AI is a tool in the right hands, used for the right purposes. We can actually be faithful with this and good stewards of the tool and not fearful. And number three, in Paul's letter to the Romans, he says, don't conform to the pattern of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of our mind. This tool, even though we are forming it, we are shaping AI, we humans are shaping it right now, it has the potential to shape and form us. And therefore, we need to be very discerning as we utilize this and all tools, but this in particular, because it has formative potential. I would argue that those who are in their early years and even into teenage years need to be very careful utilizing AI because they are in a much more formative season or phase than probably most of us, if not all of us on this call. That's not to say that we too aren't being formed. We are. But in the early years, as people are being shaped and formed, and their minds are quite literally being shaped and formed in physical ways, we are being shaped and formed in metaphorical or maybe even very real ways. We need to be very careful how we use these tools and deploy them within our organization. So Imago Dei, stewardship, and discernment, those are three lenses that I hope we can utilize as we're processing through all tools, but AI in particular. So let me take a brief departure and talk just a little bit about what's actually happening in the market. And I'll give you kind of some very practical tools about AI maybe frameworks about AI that can help you. For those of you in particular that have exposure to your boards or your executive leadership teams, there's three purviews that I think we need to be very sensitive to. Number one, the US. Number two, the EU. Those of you who actually sell into the EU or Europe. And number three, the globe. Those of you that have exposure to or field offices or sales outside of the US and the EU. The number one policy market is, of course, at home. Every state is beginning to develop their own posture towards AI. And I would literally work with AI to discern what the implications are for you and your business, your ministry per state. Most AIs are going to be very good at it. Claude and ChatGPT can help you define or at least learn what do we need to be sensitive to in our missions organization or our sales channels per state within the United States. The same is true in the EU. The EU AI Act, I think, was deployed, I think, 2 years ago. It is probably the most restrictive in terms of governance that I know of. There are a couple of countries that have actually locked down AI even more strictly than the EU has. So what I said isn't quite true. But you have to, if you have any exposure in the EU, you have to be very, very sensitive to the AI Act, specifically in how data is handled within your organization. That's personally identifiable information. Any customer data is very, very sensitive, subordinate to the EU AI Act. And then country by country, you have to know how does data governance, policy, security, privacy, how do those rules affect how we govern data if we engage in any customer activity outside of the US and the EU. Four different areas where I would encourage your organization to be thinking about your data, your IP, and your engagement with customers is data, identity, brand, and audit. Number one, in terms of PII or personally identifiable information, it's really important to have a data governance policy. It doesn't have to be extensive, but I'd say you got to have at least a one-page data governance policy on how your data gets managed, how it's secured, where it goes, which countries of origin it touches, et cetera. Secondly, within your organization, I would highly advocate for within your IT staff having single sign-on or multi-factor authentication on every surface that touches AI. That is your workstations, your servers, everything needs to have a single sign-on multi-factor authentication. As AI begins to extend its tentacles, I use that term metaphorically, although there's actually a very literal application of that. As it extends its tentacles in and through your organization, if you don't have single sign-on multi-factor authentication turned on, the chances of data breach go up. So I would make sure that is turned on and that you have identity authentication for every surface turned on. I would highly advocate that personal accounts are not commingled with corporate or enterprise accounts in whatever ways that you can turn on enterprise accounts and permit those across your organization. I would highly advocate for that because you can actually provide security access or protections at levels that you can't when you open up to personal account. Under brand or provenance, I think in particular in the publishing industry, it's a critical importance to understand when and where artificial intelligence is used. Is it just for operational internal workflows? Do you permit it for marketing purposes that actually goes outbound? Are authors allowed to use it, editors, et cetera? Disclosure standards and governance has to be, I think, a really important decision within your organization. And then lastly, audit. Knowing what you have permitted AI to use, and having kind of a data log, I think is really, really important as you and your executive teams are making decisions, because boards are going to be asking these questions. And if they're not already, they will. And probably questions will be asked of them as well. So let me talk very briefly about some things that I would encourage for you as a team to do. I've given you kind of three horizons: a 30-day task list, a 90-day task list, and a 1 year task list. Under 30 days, you'll notice that AI guardrails, that's that governance guideline. I would, if you don't already have a guardrail or governance guideline, I would highly encourage that. Number two, for those of you that haven't started tinkering with AI, I would open a Claude account, a Claude Enterprise account. I would permission probably at least everybody who's willing to experiment, but I would say your entire organization to have a Claude Pro account on that enterprise account. That's $20 a month, might even be cheaper for enterprise seats. But I would encourage everybody to identify what's one repetitive task that you do, whether, if you're in marketing and you're building your social media calendar, invite Claude to ask you, literally say, hey, I'm in marketing. I build a social media calendar. I manage it every week. How can you help me? And ask Claude to help you automate that task or at least streamline it. Pick one repetitive task for every person. Ask the tool how it can help you, and then let it help you along the way. And as I mentioned, Claude or ChatGPT, eliminate personal account drift within your organization where you can. That's in 30 days. Very easy for you to be able to deploy. Within 90 days, 3 to 5 use cases. So not just one repetitive admin task, 3 to 5 use cases need to be deployed that are mission fit and generate ROI, return on investment. Field report consolidation, donor segmentation for those of you that have a nonprofit arm, grant drafting, or again, if you're a for-profit organization, your pro forma, your ongoing balance sheet, et cetera. Claude is getting incredibly efficient at that. Make sure that each pilot has an owner, a metric, and a kill date, a go, no go date. My guess is almost all of them will be go. And then over the course of a year, ensure that every senior leader is AI optional, is AI literate. I think this is not optional. And I would argue everybody within the organization should be. Have lunch and learns, have demo days, have people who, really embrace it, be folks who can tell stories about what works. I've heard of organizations that actually incentivize their organization or their employees for AI use. You might want to do that because I think you can really encourage engagement and promote it using that. Promote on judgment, not output volume. What that means is, for those of you who have tinkered with AI, you'll note that it makes content creation far easier, doesn't mean far better. And so I would say you have to encourage people to use judgment. Volume of output of information is not what we're looking for. It's quality of the content that we're looking for, quality of the work, not volume of work. I will, let's see, I'll close with this and then we'll open to questions. And I'm not able to actually look at what's going on in the Q&A, so I'll do that as soon as I can. But final thought is this, again, in the scriptures, in the book of First Chronicles, the group that is essentially celebrated is a group, a tribe that knows not only what's going on in the world, but they actually know what to do about it. And my hope is you and I, we can be like them, understanding what's going on, or worse, not understanding and being fearful about what's going on. That's not going to help things. Yes, we need to understand the times, but we need to know what to do about it. I'll say this, and then again, we can go to some Q&A. I spend a good bit of time helping organizations think through not just tactics. Tactics is oftentimes what people go to in moments like these. You'll notice that's down at the bottom. That is what you do now, right? The tools, the pilots, the workflows. I would argue every person here needs to start at the top of this. And that is to say, understand your essence. Why do you exist? And then migrate to your vision. Where are you going? What's the destination of our organization, of our team, of what I'm trying to do? And then build the strategy, which answers the question, of course, how do we go about achieving that vision based on our essence? And finally, you conclude with tactics. Don't start with tactics. The tools are important, but you got to understand the what or the why before you move to the what. And if I or we can help you do that, I mentioned I'm a part of a partnership where we actually partner with organizations like you to help understand the why, that build the vision, build the strategy that ultimately leads to tactics. It's called the Next Mountain. Happy to answer questions about that. But my hope is this has been really, really helpful for you. And I'd love to open up to questions in the 5 minutes I think that we have left.
Thank you, Jason. That was great. And I for those of you who'd like have some questions or comments, please feel free to use the Q&A. I'm going to start off because I already kind of mentioned something to Jason I think was kind of important. In one of the latter slides, Jason, you mentioned about making sure that your executives, as well as those around you, are AI literate. And
Yep.
that is, yeah, and that's such a great phrase. But can you give us some insight into what that actually means? Because it's so hard to unpack if you don't know.
Yeah. Well, first thing is, and this is going to sound perhaps basic, you got to use it. AI literate requires usage, right? So my first exhortation, if I can, be direct, is you got to use AI. Like I said, open a Claude account. I would, if you're a senior leader at your organization, open a Claude Enterprise account. Grab as many seats as you think you need, deploy it. You got to use it. And then I would say, I mean, again, that's pretty basic. Use it is what AI readiness means. Secondly, I would say, ask Claude. Here's who I am. Here's the question, or here's what I want. In fact, let's do a little. We're going to do a little experiment right now, Therese. Let me see if I can move this out of
Go
the
for
way.
it.
Yeah, let's do an experiment. This is Claude. If you've never used Claude before, you can see lots and lots. So here's Claude, and I'm going to do this little test. So I'm working or sitting with a bunch of publishers and people in marketing, et cetera, who are wanting to learn more about AI. Can you answer the question for this audience? What does it mean to be AI ready or AI literate? So this is Claude. I used Opus 4.8, which is their highest model. They actually just disabled Claude Fable 5. You don't need to worry about that. But let's see what Claude or how Claude actually responds. Now, note that Claude Opus 4.8 is it's the most sophisticated model, which means it's going through a very high level of reasoning right now. If you wanted to use a model that is less reasoning and faster, you can use Sonnet or Haiku or even Opus 4.6 or 4.7 or 4 or 3. The point of those is those are faster, more nimble models. They're not going to be nearly as adept at reasoning. So the highest model is going to be the most expensive model, but it's also going to be the slowest model. So if you want speed, go with a more nimble model. It's probably not going to be as good a response, but again, speed versus quality. So here's how Claude responded. They get used interchangeably, but they answer different questions. AI literacy is personal. It's the judgment to use the tools well, knowing what they're genuinely good at. Most stop it. I can get it to write something. Real literacy is the hard skill. spotting when the output is confidently wrong, and knowing the one thing should never hand off. For a publisher, that's editorial judgment. For a marketer, it's whether the voice sounds like you or everyone else. AI readiness is organizational. It's whether the system around the person, workflows, data, standards, culture can turn that literacy into value without creating new risk. You can have a few sharp, literate people in an organization nowhere near ready because nothing they produce can move through the building without something breaking. So it continues on, distinction, blah, blah, blah. Point being, I literally said, I don't know much about this. Coach me through it. Okay, so let's actually try that. Can you build at least an outline to equip me to be both AI ready and AI literate? Let's see how it will walk through this. Again, thinking model. In fact, I'm going to pause this. We're going to switch to a different model that is Haiku 4.5. I'm going to copy that and we're going to go down here and see if Haiku 4.5 is faster than Opus 4.8. So you can see that was about a 5 second. So build this in two tracks, one for you personally, one for the system around you. So this is your AI literacy outline. Know the constraints, develop a muscle, know when it's saving you time, understand formation. I love that, right? Use the term formation that we just talked about. AI readiness, clarity on what you won't automate. Remember, essence, vision, strategy before tactics. Standards for output that leaves the building. What can we do? That's governance. Got to do governance, data and access governance. Skills gap. This is when we get to tactics and then iteration cadence, constantly iterating. That's a decent outline from Claude Haiku. So, again, I hope that's helpful.
Yep. Yeah, it is. We've got another question from Jim
Yep.
about personal account drift. And
Yep.
Jim asks, is the recommendation that you tell your employees to use their corporate account for personal queries as well as work? For example, recipe planning. I love that, Jim.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you can use your judgment for that. I would probably use personal. It's not going to, violate terms of an enterprise account by any stretch. I'll tell you, if I'm in your organization, Jim, I want Claude being trained on, kind of me and my personal lifestyle. And so I do my, recipes in my personal account. And you probably don't even need a $20 a month pro account for your personal life unless you're doing heavy build. Therefore, I would use, pro account at work for work stuff and my personal account for personal things. Great question.
Cool. Any other questions? You have Jason's contact information, so you can always follow up with him if you do have anything from the future beyond our time here together.
And I just shared that deck, the entire deck in the Q&A, or sorry, in the webinar chat. So I think hosts and panelists got that. Oh, wait a sec.
That's
Uh,
okay. I'm gonna make sure we get it. Don't worry
okay.
about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take
The
care of
the
that.
reason I think that's important, let me paste it in the Q&A. Does everybody see that or no? Oh no, I can't paste. I can't
I
do
don't
that.
know, but I just copy and paste the two documents. I'll include it with everything that
Yep.
we're gonna send out.
Here's why this is important. I've included a couple of resources that I think would be important for those who want to dive deeper in AI. Of course, the Pope's Magnifica Humanitas launched or was dropped 2 weeks ago. It's amazing. If you haven't been through it, he compares the Tower of Babel and rebuild of Jerusalem. This is another Vatican document with doctrinal inputs. This is a documentary. If you haven't watched this, you gotta watch it. Daniel Rohr, the AI doc. Three books, Co-Intelligence, More Human, and Andy Crouch's book, The Life We're Looking For. Other tools that I think would be valuable for you. And then I give you a couple of different paths to go down. If you're interested and curious, you want theology, you're an operator, you're a board chair. I've given you kind of some tool outlines as well. So that's all in the deck itself.
Great. Thank you, Jason.
You're
This has been
welcome.
wonderful. Yeah, I mean, all these resources, the value that you're bringing is collecting them and organizing them in a way that makes sense so we can kind of go to which direction we need to go.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for being here and be willing to share this again with a broader audience. Thank you to those of you who are able to come today. Lunch and Learn is a great idea, so I hope you'll come back. We will hopefully have a couple of the other presenters too in the future, near future, doing a similar kind of thing, just kind of recapping what they did at the meeting. And as I said, you will get a copy of this in multiple ways at the website, at YouTube channel, in an email, in the newsletter. I think that's for somewhere. There's probably a fifth one. But thank you. Thank you for your time. Jason, thank you very much. And we look forward to hoping being in touch with you in the future.
Thanks,
Everybody
Therese.
else, you're welcome. Thank you for being here today. And that is the end of our webinar for right now.
Have a great day. Cheers.
Okay.